Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Rob and you're watching Outside in the 515. Today we are going to do a little welding. Stay tuned. Okay, so like I said in the intro, we've got some welding to do today. This is a repair job. A friend of mine, the cradle on their boat trailer cracked. And I don't really do much welding for other people these days, mainly because I don't carry liability insurance anymore. But I've known these people for many years, and he's also a vet, so you got to take care of your veterans. Well, he's not a vet; he's still active military, so you got to take care of our nation's finest anytime you get. So I'll turn you around here and show you what we got going on. So like I said, this is a cradle, the front cradle to a fishing boat. And what cracked is the welds all the way around. And then it was starting to crack right there. And then I've already got this gusset cut because this is where it's broke the worst. So this has got to be the side that's taken the most stress. And then I got this gusset cut. And that should take care of it. And then when I get all that in place, then I'll grind the rest of it out and weld it in. That way I don't lose the pitch that it needs to be. And the equipment we're going to be using is a Metabo grinder with a 3M disc, another Metabo grinder with a 3-inch or with a 3M flat disc. This is my 6-inch Metabo cutoff or grinder that I mainly use for cutoff wheels. You're gonna need a grind shield. I need a welding helmet, and I prefer the Speed Glass 9100X Speed Glass helmets. I think they're the best. And then we're gonna fire up the Millermatic 255. So most of you are familiar with just your standard MIG welder like this, which would be like a short arc welder. This is a pulse welder, and this welds more like your factory settings for thicker steel, better penetration. So that's what we're going to be using today. So I don't know how good this footage is going to turn out, because I don't have one of those fancy cameras that you put behind the shield and it shows you how I'm welding. So I'll get you set up as close as I can to what I'm doing without blasting your eyes too bad. So here we go. Well, I think I'm gonna have to fire up the air compressor and use my little pencil grinder to cut that out. Just too much for the grinder, too much of an angle to get the grinder in there all the way. I should be able to, well, I might even have to do it here on this, where it's got this kind of lip, so maybe just the front is about the only spot I'll be able to use an actual grinding disc. So let's get the compressor going and we'll get this cut out. Well, I can't find my little rasp tool for my pencil grinder, so I'm going to put a new disc on. New hard stone on the grinder. We'll see if that makes it a little easier to get in. Do that a little bit. Yeah, I can probably get all of it. I might have to add one to the back side here. There we go. Okay, so now take this clamp off. We're gonna get this spun like that. I don't know if you can still, let me check the camera, see if you can still see me. Let's get you a little closer here. Hold this down, and I'm going to throw a couple tacks on it. It's about to close that gap. Just like that. Okay, so the biggest thing with welding is cleanliness, okay? Cleanliness is next to godliness. The cleaner you can have your material that you're welding, the better the weld is gonna be. So all your rust, paint, at a minimum needs to come off, okay, as best you can. Now I know some of you will say, well, my stick welder will burn right through that. Baloney. You have never done the destructive testing that I have done on this stuff, okay? I've got 5 years on my resume working for weld engineering, and we did a lot of destructive tests, and I've seen a lot of stuff that causes welds to fail. So you do not tell me that you're burning through that stuff, because all that's doing is it's pulling that into the weld and making a weaker weld, okay? The other thing you want to do is even on your clean steel, is you want to take that mill scale off where you're going to be welding it. Because that mill scale, okay, this is what the steel looks like before, and then where I grinded it, or I sanded it off. That mill scale is going to cause undercut, and it's also going to pull that into the weld, and it's going to make it not a pure weld. Okay, so you want to try to clean as much of your mill scale off as you can. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out on this piece everywhere that I'm going to be welding, and I'll know to take that paint off, and then I can get in here and kind of clean these up a little bit. And I don't know if you can see it. I'll spin you around. Okay, so I'm gonna have to mark up here where this gusset's gonna go. And I don't remember how it went. I think it's like that. No. Like that. No. I'm gonna have to figure out how that went on there. But where this gusset's gonna be, I'm gonna have to figure out where I need to clean this paint off. And then when I was grinding it out, I kind of got into that. So I'll have to dress all this, make it look like it was supposed to be that way. And then we'll clean all that up and take as much of the paint off up here as we can, and we'll get this side all welded on, and then we'll work on the other side. Oh, it's on the floor. Okay, so let me try to remember. There we go. Here. Okay, that'll take care of that. Now, I better. That's what I want. I meant to do that. Let's get that stood up like this. See what we got. Why wouldn't they just... Okay, so that's easy enough. That's 1.5 inches. There we go. Come over here and look in the camera and see if, like, it's a good shot. Can you see me in here in the picture?
Just your Iron Man helmet.
Okay, that's fine.
When you mean your head.
But I mean, it's a good shot.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I needed.
Yeah, it just goes to here, to like your stomach.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
We got as much as we could on your orange one, but it's like it's.
You know I'm recording right now, right? It's all right. I can edit it out.
Yeah, but yeah, you're good.
Okay. Throw a little tacky tack on that side. Tacky tack on that side. And then, oh, I forgot to mention too. So on this side for sure, I'm gonna do what's called a triple pass. So I'm gonna put a pass down the root, and then I'm gonna come to this side. I'm gonna come to the bottom side of the first pass and lay a pass, and then I'm gonna lay a pass. So you should see two passes. And that's the mistake I see a lot of you guys that I've noticed on that you're new to welding. The mistake you're making is you think a big weld is a stronger weld, and that is not true. Not always true at all. What you're doing is you're actually putting more unnecessary heat into it instead of, if you stack smaller welds on top, you're getting the same penetration with a whole lot less heat, so you're making the metal less brittle. Okay, so let's try to get this triple pass in, and then we'll put the gusset on it. Okay, so there's the first pass. There's the second pass. Now, I'm probably going to have to stand this up. Hey Sheila, I need you to be my camera person for a little bit. Because the way this thing is cracked, I don't know if it's gonna ground good enough. We'll see. I don't want to turn it the other way. You might have to come over on this side, but don't worry about looking into it yet. Let me get in position.
Okay. You want me to move?
Come back over here.
Back there?
Yeah. But hold on, let me get a tack, see if it'll. There we go. Hold on, I'm not too.
Right, I'm just holding it.
Yeah. Let's do it this way, I think. Ready?
Yep.
Get down in here. Okay, so see what I mean? I've got a pass and then a pass. But I think what I'm gonna do is because the crack was so high up the tube, I think I'm gonna lay some more weld on that. So I'm gonna put another weld there and then stack another one on top of that. And then put my gusset in.
Yep.
Okay, well, that moved a little bit on me, but. Stop. Okay, so we got the gusset tacked on. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a weld down here on both sides, tied into there. And then I'm going to put a weld from there into there, and that should strengthen this part up here. So here we go. I'm going to prop that. That'll be all right. Just stay there, Sheila.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as you can see from my weld, I don't manipulate it much, okay? I'm pretty much just straight pushing. And that's gonna bring me to my next point. There's a lot of talk about whether you should push a weld, pull a weld, or some will call it dragging a weld. Here's the trick to that. If there's slag, you drag, okay? So your stick welders, your flux core, you're gonna wanna drag. When you have gas, whether you're TIG welding, MIG welding, okay, you're gonna wanna push that weld because you're gonna wanna keep the gas out in front of you and keep that, so that way you can keep the impurities and the oxygen out of your weld, okay? So now we've got that welded on both sides, tied into that weld. So now I'm gonna stand it back up and I'm gonna put these welds in, and then we'll put the welds on the sides. Left my welder behind. And if you notice, I don't have too severe of an angle, okay? You really, I know a lot of you are taught 45-degree work angle, 45-degree this. You don't, the more straight you are with your weld, the better it's gonna penetrate into your joint. The further you lean it, one way or another, whether you're dragging or pushing, the more the weld is not concentrated in that joint. So you want to be almost as straight on with just a slight push angle if you're MIG welding, or a slight drag angle if you're stick welding. Okay, so that is that. Now we're going to put this weld in. Okay, this weld is in. Second weld is in. Third weld is in. And as that cools down, you'll see two passes, and the face of that weld is almost flat. Okay. Now, let's turn this the other way. And we'll go the opposite way. First weld is in. Okay, now, you see on that second weld, it's got a hump, but there, and then see how I wrapped that and tied it in, okay? But there's a nice tray for this next weld to lay in. And it peeled the sticker off. Okay? So see how that's got a nice flat face to it? And it all ties in. And see how I wrapped it around past the tangent? Okay? So your tangent is the line. On every square tube, there's a line. I wrapped both of them around that tangent, so there's not really a start or stop in the middle of that corner. And then this is all tied in, so it's not going anywhere. So now what we got to do is I'm going to let this cool down a minute, and then I've got to get the front side cleaned up, and then I kind of got to get all this paint and stuff scraped off of it. So we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, so we got this front side all cleaned up. I thought I had hit record, but I didn't. We got the weld all ground out. I'm going to take and kind of smooth that up just a little bit and try to take as much of that off as I can. And then I'll have to reshape the sides just a little bit, but that's not a big deal. We'll be good to go. So hang tight. Okay, so now I need to put a triple pass or a 2-pass visible weld in here. Clean, I've got all of the little sand marks cleaned up, and then this is kind of a crinkle paint. I don't really have anything to match, but I do have some high temp flat black that will just have to work, and if they don't like it, then they can sand it all down and repaint it themselves. So let's get to welding. Well, that was weird. Little gas hole there on the end, but that's okay. We're gonna put 2 more passes over it. So now, if you notice, the first pass, I didn't really tie in too much to the 2 welds going down each side. So now what I'm gonna do is I have feather grinded back on these corners a little bit, so I've got better start and stop spots. Okay, second pass is in. Got a nice little tray to lay this third pass, and then we'll be done. Bingo bango. That's a 2-pass visible or a triple pass or a 3-pass weld, and you're not putting so much heat right in the middle. You're spreading your heat out, because if you concentrate too much heat in a short area, this way it's spreading it out. See how that heat come up right there? That means it's spreading out, and that's what you want. You don't want isolated heat in a one spot if you're trying to make this really strong. Okay, so now what we gotta do is we gotta scrape all the spatter off of it and kind of take this paint that got burnt up and then we should be done. So. So, I don't know how you're going to hear me over this fan or not. But that paint matches, sorta. But that is not runs, that is sticker residue. And that's about the best I can do as far as matching paint. I am not a painter. I don't keep tons of paint on hand. But I think it's a whole lot better than it was. So, I think we're going to call that a video. Well, I think that's going to do it on this video. Now, I will say, I'm not going to argue with any of you on welding techniques or anything like that. And mainly because I'm a 30-year welder. I grew up in a weld shop, and I've been doing this since I was, I don't know. I've been a helper since I was 10. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was running a repair truck. So I've been doing this a very long time. So I'm not gonna argue, push, pull, drag any techniques with you. This is how I do it. This is how I was taught. This is how engineering will tell you how to do it. So, and like I say, I do this every day. I'm not a hobby welder. The equipment I have is not for. It's not rinky-dink equipment, okay? I use all Miller equipment, and I'll put that equipment up against anybody's equipment. So, like I said, I'm not going to argue with you on any of the techniques I used. So, that being said, I wasn't trying to sound like a complete jerk, but I know that welding techniques kind of gets people fired up. You know, well, my dad told me this, and my grandpa did this, and I've been welding for 20 some years. Well, if you've been welding professionally every day, you'll know I'm right. Okay? You can make a weld look good, and it might not be strong. Okay? I'm looking for both out of mine, and I know what's what. I've been there. So, like I said, I'm not trying to sound like a jerk about it. I know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, click all the bells and whistles at the bottom, and we'll catch you on the next one.